Somewhere on a battlefield, a single artillery battery, a handful of guns, can fire 6,000 shells in a single day. On an intense day, closer to 10,000. Now here's the number that should stop you cold. The entire United States, every factory, every production line, working around the clock, builds only about 40,000 of those same shells in a whole month. Do the math. A few guns, in a few days of hard fighting, can burn through what the most powerful industrial nation on Earth takes an entire month to produce. This isn't about having the best weapons. America has the best weapons in the world. This is about something far less glamorous and far more dangerous. The ability to keep those weapons fed. To reload. Because a weapon you can't reload isn't a weapon. It's a very expensive club. And right now, the United States is quietly losing the one war almost nobody is talking about. Not a war of technology, but a war of arithmetic. The war of who can make ammunition faster than they use it. And America is running out faster than it can build.
Start with a simple truth that the movies never show you. In a real, sustained war, the deciding factor often isn't the quality of your weapons. It's whether you have anything left to shoot. For decades, America built its military around a certain assumption: short, sharp, high-tech wars. Overwhelming force, precision weapons, and a quick victory. In that kind of war, you don't need deep stockpiles. You need superior technology, and you win before you run low. But that assumption shattered. The war in Ukraine revealed something the Pentagon had half forgotten: that a large, grinding conflict between serious militaries consumes ammunition at a rate that is almost impossible to comprehend. Not thousands of shells, millions. And suddenly, the quality of any single weapon mattered less than a brutal question: how many can you make, and how fast? A perfect missile that takes 2 years to build is worthless in a war that fires 1,000 a month. The math simply doesn't close. This is the uncomfortable lesson. The most important weapon in a long war isn't a jet or a tank or a warship. It's the factory behind them. And America's factories, it turns out, are in serious trouble. Let's put the two numbers side by side, because this is the entire crisis in one picture. On one side, consumption, the burn rate. At the peak of the fighting in Ukraine, forces were firing 6,000 to 10,000 155mm artillery shells every single day. Over a month, that's 180,000 to 300,000 rounds from one war on one front. On the other side, production. What America can actually build. As of early 2026, the United States produces around 36,000 to 40,000 of those shells per month, total, for everyone. Look at that gap. A single month of intense combat can consume 5, 6, 7 times what America manufactures in that same month. To put it another way, as one analysis did, a single artillery battery can fire more shells in one day than some American units used in months during the entire Iraq War. And it's not just artillery. Consider air defense. The Patriot Interceptor, the missile that shoots down incoming ballistic missiles, defending cities and troops, is built at a rate of only around 740 per year. In a serious missile war, that could be spent in weeks. This is the arithmetic that keeps planners awake at night. You are not running out of designs. You are not running out of engineers. You are running out of the physical objects, and you're using them faster than any factory on Earth can replace them. So how did the world's strongest military end up short on something as basic as artillery shells? It happened quietly over just a few years. When the war in Ukraine began, the United States did what allies do. It opened its warehouses. And Ukraine, fighting for survival, consumed those shells at a staggering pace. Over the course of the war, America donated more than 3 million 155mm rounds to Ukraine. Add in shells used for training, testing, and sold to other allies, and the total drawn down from U.S. stocks passed 3.6 million rounds. 3.6 million shells, gone from the shelves. And here's the problem. Those stockpiles had been built up over decades, in an era when nobody was firing them in large numbers. They were a savings account, filled slowly over many years. and that account was emptied in a fraction of the time it took to fill it. Now, none of that was a mistake, exactly.
Supporting Ukraine was a policy choice, and defending stockpiles is what they exist for. But it exposed the fragile truth underneath. America had been living off a Cold War inheritance of ammunition and had quietly lost the ability to refill the shelves quickly. The savings were being spent far faster than any income could replace them. Which brings us to the real heart of the problem. Not the spending, the making. Here's what most people assume. If you need more shells, you just spend more money and make more shells. It turns out that's almost completely wrong. And understanding why is the key to this whole story. Making a modern artillery shell is not like stamping out cans. It's a heavy industrial process. First, you have to forge the projectile. Take raw steel and press it under enormous force into a precise metal body strong enough to survive being fired from a cannon. Then, at a separate facility, you fill it with explosive. Then you need the propellant, the charge that actually launches it, and the fuse that makes it work. Every step is a specialized factory, and the whole chain moves only as fast as its slowest link. And America's chain is old. Much of the artillery industrial base dates back to the Cold War. Plants that were never modernized, never expanded, because for 30 years nobody thought they'd need to.
You cannot flip a switch and make a 1950s factory produce 5 times more overnight. The bottlenecks are brutally specific. The Pentagon's own watchdog found that forging the metal parts, the very first step, is the single biggest constraint on the whole effort. There simply isn't enough capacity to forge projectile bodies fast enough. On top of that, for years, the propellant that launches these shells wasn't even made in the United States. It came from a plant in Canada. A core component of American firepower produced in another country. So when America decided to surge production, it didn't just need money, it needed to rebuild an entire industrial base almost from scratch. New forges, new explosive plants, new propellant lines, new skilled workers, all of which take years, not months, to bring online. Let's walk the assembly line, because the failures are hiding at specific points on it. Step 1. Forge the metal projectile. This is the choke point. The Pentagon's Inspector General found the Army simply cannot forge enough metal parts to hit its targets. One brand new facility, built in Texas at a cost of around $500 million, specifically to make these projectile parts, was found to be unable to produce a single part that met specifications. $500 million and 0 usable shells coming out. Step 2. The explosive fill. A separate plant, a separate bottleneck. Step 3. The propellant. Historically made in Canada, now being painfully relocated to the United States, a process that itself takes years. Now the targets. Back in early 2024, the Army laid out a confident ramp, 60,000 shells a month by that October, 75,000 by spring 2025, and 100,000 a month by October 2025. It was going to triple, then quadruple output.
Reality. By early 2026, months past that 100,000 deadline, production sat around 36 to 40,000 a month. The goal has been quietly pushed to the middle of 2026, and even that is in doubt. Despite the largest ammunition investment since World War II, billions of dollars, the line simply will not move as fast as a spreadsheet promised. Because you cannot buy forged steel, trained workers, and a rebuilt industrial base with urgency alone. They take time, and in a war, time is the one thing you don't have.
So why does this rise to the level of a quiet catastrophe? Because of what it means the moment America faces not a small war, but a big one. The Pentagon's own Inspector General said it plainly. The inability to produce enough 155mm ammunition could directly reduce military readiness and raise the risk of failing to meet the needs of the United States and its allies in a future conflict. That is the government's own watchdog, warning that America might not be able to sustain a war it enters. Think about a conflict in the Pacific, the scenario planners worry about most. It would consume not just artillery, but precision missiles, interceptors, and munitions of every kind, at rates that would make Ukraine look modest. And unlike a land war in Europe, resupply would have to cross the largest ocean on Earth under fire. In that scenario, whatever is in the magazines when the war starts may be close to all you get. There is no time to build more mid-war. This is what makes it so dangerous. It's invisible in peacetime. A stockpile shortage doesn't show up at a parade. The jets still fly, the ships still sail, everything looks strong. The weakness only reveals itself on day 30 of a real war, when the shelves are bare and the factory still can't keep up. By then, it's too late to fix. The most powerful military in history could find itself with the best weapons in the world and nothing left to load into them. Step back, and this connects to something bigger. A lesson that keeps repeating across all of modern warfare. In the Second World War, America didn't win primarily because it had the best individual tanks or planes. Often it didn't. It won because it could outproduce everyone. Because its factories could build weapons faster than the enemy could destroy them. They called it the arsenal of democracy. Production itself was the superpower. Somewhere in the decades of high-tech, low-volume warfare, that lesson got lost. The focus shifted entirely to making each weapon more exquisite, more capable, more expensive, and fewer in number. A $1,000 drone can now threaten a multi-million-dollar weapon. A cheap shell, made in the millions, can matter more than a perfect one made by the dozen. The advantage swung back toward mass, and America had spent 30 years building the opposite. It's the same truth we've seen again and again. The exquisite $8 billion warship whose ammunition became too expensive to buy. The cheap drone that humbles the expensive carrier. And now, the simple artillery shell that America can design better than anyone and simply cannot make fast enough. The weapon is not the sword. The weapon is the forge behind it. And a nation that forgets how to mass produce has quietly disarmed itself, no matter how good its blueprints are. So, can it be fixed? Yes, but slowly and not by wishing. The United States is now pouring in the largest ammunition investment since World War II. Billions of dollars, new plants rising in Iowa, Kansas, Arkansas, Texas, and elsewhere. Production has genuinely climbed, from about 14,000 shells a month before the war to nearly triple that today. That's real progress, and it deserves to be said honestly. The plan is to eventually load and assemble well over 100,000 rounds a month, and to bring propellant production home so America no longer depends on another country for the charge that fires its shells. If those plants come fully online, the picture improves dramatically. But every part of this takes years. New forges, new explosive lines, new skilled workers. None of it can be rushed into existence. The honest situation is a race. America is rebuilding its arsenal as fast as heavy industry allows, and betting that no major war arrives before the new factories are finished. It's a race between the assembly line and the calendar, and nobody knows for certain which one wins. So, why does America run out of ammunition faster than it can make it? Because for 30 years, it built a military obsessed with the sword and forgot about the forge. It perfected the weapon and let the factory behind it decay. And then a real war reminded everyone of the oldest rule of all, that firepower isn't what you own, it's what you can replace. A single battery can fire in a day what the whole country builds in a month. 3.5 million shells left the shelves in a few years, and the line that's supposed to refill them still can't keep pace. The best armed nation on Earth is, quietly, running its magazines down. None of this shows up in peacetime. The jets still fly. The parade still looks unstoppable. But the real measure of military power was never the weapon in the display case. It was the factory in the background. The one nobody films, nobody cheers, and for 30 years, nobody funded. Because in the end, the most important weapon a country has isn't the one it fires.
It's the one it can build again tomorrow.